Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. So I'll give everybody a few minutes to kind of hop into the room and get settled. Maybe a minute or two. We'll do like a sound check on our end. Christina, I can see you. I can hear you.
Hi everyone, I'm Christina. I am a third-year law student at Northwestern. We're going to take a minute, but I can hear you and see you as well. I'm excited to do this webinar.
Fantastic. Okay. In the meantime, I'd love to take a moment to just go over some housekeeping rules. So we're looking at running this webinar for about 45 minutes. We'll spend half an hour dedicated to the presentation, and of course, we'll leave some time at the end for question and answers. With that being said, I just wanted to direct you to the Q&A box on the side. Please feel free to drop in your questions, and we'll have Christina answer them at the end. As well, this webinar is being recorded, and you will be receiving a copy of it, I believe, in 2 or 3 days' time to your inbox. And we encourage you to rewatch it, to share it with your friends, your family, other students who you think it might be valuable for, including the ones in your own club. Again, we're Juris Education. We're a law school admissions consulting firm committed to helping ambitious pre-law students such as yourselves get accepted to the nation's most prestigious institutions. We're extremely passionate about breaking down higher education barriers and providing aspiring legal professionals with expert insights they need to sort of strategically position themselves as the ultimate law school applicant. With that being said, I wanted to hop into tonight's webinar, Guide for Pre-Law Students. So, a little bit of an agenda. So, introduction, so I'll let Christina introduce herself. We'll speak about navigating the pre-law landscape, overview of the law school application process, the introduction to the LSAT, helpful tips to ace the application process, and of course, that Q&A that we touched on earlier. Before we dive into navigating the pre-law landscape, Christina, do you want to take over and say a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about the journey to law school. It definitely starts in your undergrad years. I started thinking about law school before I graduated undergrad, but I still took 2 years in between, and you can obviously do both ways. Again, my name is Christina Aldame. I am a third year JD MBA at Northwestern, and we'll kind of talk about my experience as we walk through this webinar and touch on some key points that I think are important for people to start thinking about, and we'll take questions at the end. So, navigating the pre-law landscape. So the importance of pre-law preparation, make sure that you're prepared to submit your application when you're ready to go. And so there's a lot of decisions to be made, whether you want to go to law school, things about the application that if you're not thinking ahead, you will not be able to do as easily. For example, if you know you want to go to law school, you might want to think about keeping in touch with professors so you can get letters of recommendation, thinking about the classes that you want to take, thinking about the internships you want to have on your resume. And those are the kind of things that you think about as a pre-law student. Courses. So law school does not require any courses whatsoever. I know a lot of people do political science, psychology, history, philosophy, English, criminal justice. I say do the subject that's most interesting to you. Um, Obviously, some of these majors can be super helpful in the legal field just based on the knowledge that you have. But I say do a major or learn something that's interesting to you, where you feel like you can do your best and you can connect with your professors and connect with the field, because you'll get better grades that way, and grades are a huge part of your law school application. Don't do a major because you've heard it's good for law school. They don't require anything. Do something that will help you be your best self, and maybe something that'll help you later on, especially something that will help you get the internships that you might be interested in or subject matters that you think are interesting. Extracurriculars. So on your law school application, there will definitely be opportunities to highlight your leadership opportunities, any internships you've done, and just maybe giving law schools the opportunity to see you as a well-rounded candidate and someone who has considered the legal field or have some kind of connection or some sort of insight into why you want to go into the legal field. And that could look like mock trial, that could look like student government, that could look like providing support to your professors who might need help in research. That could look like doing legal internships, working for the district attorney's office, working for the state attorney general. You have several summers available to you in your undergrad years. You could definitely take one, or even during the semester, do an internship that exposes you to the legal field. And I think that would be a really great way to signal to law schools that you thought long and hard about the legal field and the types of jobs that you might want to do after you graduate. Okay, the significance of networking and internships. So we talked a lot about internships and exposure already and how it can help signal to law schools that you're serious about going to law school, but it can also be a great way to build legal connections. And in the legal field, networking is everything. Even when you apply to school and you're looking for jobs and figuring out what you want to do during your law school summers and post graduation, networking is a big, big part of your journey as a law student and even throughout your career as a lawyer because you want to build those connections. You want to see what's out there because your mind could change. You can come into law school and think, I want to do one thing, but you end up wanting to do something else, and you want to have the network who can kind of share the knowledge and talk to you about what kind of jobs are out there, how to achieve your goals, and just kind of mentors and sponsors who are willing to, you know, write you a letter of recommendation for a job and kind of let you know what's what in the legal field or even at a company you want to work for. Okay, so now we talked a little bit about what you can do to prepare. But let's talk a little bit about the law school application process. So, to apply to law school, you have to submit proof of an undergraduate degree. That typically looks like having your school send out your transcripts. And there is a process for that, I promise. It's through your school's portal, and they'll be able to put it on LSAC. Something that's not on this slide, LSAC, is where your application is populated. That's where you pay for your law school applications. That's where everything is housed, and that's the company that essentially communicates to the law schools for you. They get your degree, they got your LSAT score. You upload your personal statements, your letters of recommendation, your resume, and all those things. Um, so outside of your transcript and proof of your degree, you will have to take the LSAT or the GRE. We'll definitely come back to talking more about both of those exams, why they're important, and which one you should take. Personal statement, that's something just to kind of show a little bit more about who you are, things that aren't measured by the numbers or the grades that are on your resume or your transcript, and to give the law schools a bigger picture about the candidate that you will be coming into law school, the type of person they'll be accepting. And your letters of recommendation, they're letters on behalf of you by your professors or your supervisor at work. Again, you can apply to law school straight out of undergrad, or you can apply years after you've got some work experience. Both absolutely work. It just changes what your application might look like. And lastly, your resume. Earlier, we talked about leadership positions and showing who you are on campus. If you plan on going directly from undergrad to law school, the kind of leadership positions and the kind of work that you do as an undergrad really matters because that's what you're going to be able to fill your resume with, the jobs that you do, the internships that you participate in. That's what the law firms are kind of, not the law firms, the law schools will look like. And again, also the law firms, because once you start law school, you'll want to have summer internships. You're not going to have time to do much in between once you start law school and once you start sending out your resume to employers for maybe your first summer. Um, so it's important to kind of build those leadership positions from your undergrad. And of course, even a couple years out, if you start working, it's important to continue showing leadership and advocacy or whatever points or whatever traits about yourself you want to highlight in the application process. So research and preparation. So this is especially important if you want to go directly from undergrad into law school. Obviously, if you want to take a couple years, you can put this off a little bit, but it's just as important. It's just whenever you're ready to apply, this is something that you should definitely do. You want to explore law schools. Where do you want to live? What kind of career you want to have? What are your academic goals? What are your personal goals? You just want to kind of look at what schools have to offer and give yourself a sense of what those schools are looking for, their admissions criteria. Do you meet the GPA? What kind of LSAT or GRE scores they're looking for? Who do you know that are best positioned to write you letters of recommendation? Do they have more than one essay prompt? Some schools just take a personal statement. Others have a personal statement. They have secondary statements that they want you to talk about. They want you to answer why our school, and you have to have an answer. And so getting a sense of what those schools might require of you is important so you can plan out the application process. Lastly, you want to consider, what type of school you want to go to, the atmosphere, the faculty, the programs, and of course, that goes into more the nitty gritty once you've obviously decided, yes, I'm ready to go to law school. But that's definitely something that you want to think about once you start, before you decide to start, sending out applications to schools. It's important to narrow down your schools to what you think, or schools that you think you may go to, so that you're not applying too broadly and not focusing on the applications that really matter. Okay, so you register for the LSAT through LSAC. I mentioned LSAC earlier. It's the Law School Admissions Council. That houses everything. It houses your applications, your LSAT score. That's where you'll upload your resume and your personal statements and any other statements that you might need to write. You'll be able to enroll, and they'll give you all the details about what you need to do moving forward, and you'll be able to pay, and that portal will be your best friend throughout the entire application process. So when you think about getting into law school, the first thing that comes to mind is the LSAT. Taking the LSAT, what score you need on the LSAT. Lately, schools have been also taking the GRE. And so you can also think about taking that exam. And that conversation comes through what your strengths are. There are two very different exams. We can get into it now. When you're looking at the LSAT, a lot of schools post their median scores. And if you know what schools you want to go to, you know what scores you're shooting for. And to be honest, you want to shoot for as high as possible. And give yourself time to retake the test if you need to, because some schools may consider your highest score even if you didn't do so well the first time. Okay, I know we'll talk more about the GRE versus LSAT later on, so I'll just continue for now. So when you sign up for LSAC, again, that's where all your materials are housed. They also have this service where they will send out everything that the law schools need to have, and that's where you'll pay to submit your applications. Each school, it costs money to pay for law school. Depending on your LSAT score, and how long you've had it, some schools might get an inkling of what percentile you scored in, and they'll send you fee waivers. Um, Additionally, some schools, if you reach out to them, if you go to any of their events or you reach out to the admissions council, they are liable to give you a fee waiver. On top of that, there are some need-based fee waivers that you can apply for if need be, and that's all covered on LSAC. Okay, back to the LSAT. So this is the structure and format of the LSAT. Um, Logical reasoning, um, which is essentially multiple choice, but it just tests. They'll ask you a question, and they'll ask you a question based on what you've just read, and you kind of have to reason your way through finding the answer. Reading comprehension, it's reading and comprehending. We've been doing it our whole lives, but the text can be very dense. Some questions will have you go back to certain lines, that kind of thing. Analytical reasoning, which is logic games. It's just a lot of logic, a lot of games. It's a lot of being strategic to try to get, being strategic. I'm sorry, there's a bit of noise happening. Being strategic to try to get as many answers based on the way you approach the question. So as you learn about the LSAT and maybe take some LSAT courses and prep, you'll get a sense that a lot of these sections, there's a way to approach the questions, and that's what you'll learn when you are taking the exam. And as you can see here, they're doing away with the logic game section beginning in August 2024. So that's maybe something that people might not have to deal with, that may make things a little bit easier. Some people I know really like the logic games. Others think it's a waste of time. And so um, they're they love the logical reasoning section. They've been doing reading comprehension, and there's always a section that is unscored. It's just their way to test new questions. You won't know which section is which. You won't know which section is the unscored section or which section is being scored. So do your best on the entire exam. And then there is a writing sample that you will take, and that will be your entire LSAT. The scoring ranges from 120 to 180. It's based on the number of questions you've answered correctly. There's no penalty for incorrect answers. And then they convert your raw score, the amount you've answered correctly, into what your score would be in that range. It changes from year to year and from every exam to exam, just because it's based on who's taking the exam, how hard the test is, and stuff like that. And so, but there are some really good scales out there where you can kind of get a sense of how many questions you need to answer correctly to get in what range. Okay, so the LSAT is administered a couple times throughout the year. You should register for the date and time and location in advance. These things will really fill up. And if you want to make sure you get a testing site nearby where you don't have to travel super far, it would be better for you to do so. They do it at different times of the day. Sometimes you can do it in the morning, you can do it maybe early afternoon. It's up to you to decide when your brain is working best and when you typically prepared for the exam, and that will give you a better sense of what time to take the exam. There are also accommodations available, and that's something that you should look into very early to make sure the accommodations that you need for any disability has been accommodated so that there are no surprises on test day. So I'm actually going to stay here for a little bit and talk about the GRE. The GR, a lot of schools are taking the GRE now because it is the exam a lot of other schools take for other graduate programs. And I think a lot of the schools are seeing that the GRE can be an accurate measure of how well you could do based on what score you get. I think that data isn't as concrete as the LSAT data that you would see a lot of schools have, because historically law schools have just taken the LSAT. And maybe in the past few years or so, the GRE has been becoming something that law schools take. And depending on if you want to do a dual degree program, I know that I'm a JD MBA, but there are other dual degree programs that require you to take the GMAT or GRE and other exams, where you can kind of think about what exam makes the most sense for me to take for the programs I'm looking into. Are you applying to more than one grad school program? And you kind of need to make that consideration based on your application strategy and also what you're good at. They're taking away the logic game section, but I know a lot of people who maybe felt logic games wasn't their best strength, but they knew that the GRE had math and other subjects on there that weren't on the LSAT, and maybe that's better suited to their skill set. And so just really understanding what each test will test and use that to your advantage. Okay, helpful tips to ace the application process. So you want to start your application early. Obviously, I think applications open like September. And the earlier you get your application in, the easier it is to get into school. That being said, do not sacrifice the quality of your application to get it in September 1st. October is okay. I would say before Thanksgiving is awesome, just because there are people doing early decision and all those things. And so you're not really going to get an answer that quickly, but trying to get it in as soon as possible can only help you. And to do that, to kind of submit it that early, you have to start your application early. You can't start, last week of August and think you're going to submit it in September. You won't be ready. It requires a lot of moving pieces. So you should definitely start much, much earlier so that once September rolls around, you're ready to just kind of press submit. And LSAC opens early. You can have things on the site earlier on and, wait until you can actually just start the individual applications, but you can start to put your application materials on the LSAC portal. Again, do your research on the schools, where you want to live, what you're interested in. And research not only points to, the numbers or what LSAT or GPA the school's looking for, but also what are the alumni saying about the schools. Research can be very important in terms of mouth to like word of mouth, and the people who have come from that school. How are they doing? What are they doing? And do they feel supported at that school? And talking to them through LinkedIn or reaching out to the admissions committee of that school, just to get a sense of who has come out of the school and why do they love the school that they attended. Focus on your grades and test scores. Super important. That's one of the biggest deciding factors on who gets into what law school. A lot of schools post, again, their medians for both grades and test scores, so you can get a sense of where you stand just by looking it up on their website. And there's a lot of websites that populate the information, so it's on one place for a ton of schools. So definitely look those up. You want to personalize your application. When you're thinking about drafting your application or the different pieces of your application, you want to think, what do I want the admissions committee to know about me after they've read my application? And have I reinforced that thing, whatever it is? And it could be maybe 3 points. I want them to know that I'm adaptive, or I want them to know that I am a person who is passionate about advocacy, or I want them to know that I am, that I am scrappy, or how do you want to describe yourself? And have you shown that in your application and reinforced it through every single part of it? Have you shown it through, your transcript and your resume and the kind of jobs you've taken, and then continue to reinforce it with your personal statement and the story that you want to tell? And that's how you're able to kind of build a bigger picture and a rounder candidate than someone who's just a GPA and an LSAT. Letters of recommendation also are part of the picture. Who can best speak to the narrative that you want to show the law schools? And who are the professors who can show the traits that you are trying to communicate to the admissions committee? I know some people might want to get a letter of rec from someone who might be a director, a bit higher up at school, or a bit higher up at work. But if they don't know your work and they haven't worked with you, if they don't know you super personally, the letter will read that way. And they won't be able to say as much. They won't be able to say that I have spent a lot of time with this person and I know the way they work and I know their capabilities, and you'd be lucky to have them at your law school. So it's better to get someone that you've genuinely worked with, who has immense respect for you and wants to see, you kind of take the next step in your journey, than someone who kind of like knows you and is okay with writing the letter, but will likely use a template and doesn't really know, or not really know, or doesn't really have any concrete examples to say that this person has been my student for 2 years, or this person has worked for me for this amount of time and has made my life better in these ways. Number 6, be genuine, be yourself. You want to be accepted for yourself. And honestly, being more genuine is the best way to get the law schools to also love you or want you at their school. A lot of these schools have interview process, whether it be in person or virtually, and you want to be genuine in order to really, want them want in order for them to want you and accept you into their school. Staying organized, super important. There are so many moving parts. You're writing a personal statement, and let's say you're applying to 10 different schools and you have this one personal statement that you might change slightly depending on the school, but it's largely the same thing. The last thing you want to do is send the wrong personal statement to the wrong school, or send the wrong supplemental essay to the wrong school. What that communicates is that you're not organized. You don't care about that school. Everyone's getting a cookie cutter template. You want to make sure that things are labeled correctly and that things are being sent in a way where you look organized. Because once you start making these kind of careless mistakes where you just didn't read what you submitted, no matter what you try to communicate to the schools, that's going to be that glaring red flag, especially when you're competing against a lot of other students who may have the same grades and LSAT scores that you do. 8, prepare for interviews. It speaks also to the point I said about being genuine. You want to be genuine, but you want to be able to prepare for your interviews so that when the time comes, you can accurately speak to the application that you took so long to prepare. There are a lot of methods that you can use to prepare for interviews, the STAR method, and a lot of questions that are online that you can look up. I go to Northwestern. I had to interview, and it was definitely a process. I found the questions that I thought they might ask me. I wrote out answers for it. I practiced. It's important to practice so you know what you're going to say, so that you don't sound that you're not prepared, but you definitely don't want to sound rehearsed. And I think that's where preparing, being genuine comes together, especially when you want to talk to someone who's in the admissions committee or an alumni or whoever they pick to interview. You want them to be able to say, this is a person that we want at our school. And lastly, stay positive. There is a lot of information out there. A lot of people are applying for law school and they're super stressed out about it. It is a long process. The exams are exhausting. There's so many moving parts. It's expensive. And so you really want, to get into school of your choice. And sometimes it doesn't always happen. It could be, a wait list, or you're not getting the scores that you want. There are so many things that could happen, in the law school application process that can be difficult, but it's important to stay positive. It's important to keep your head up and to keep moving. It is a marathon, not a sprint. And the way that you can continue to just be successful and to get to that marathon is to continue to stay positive and to remember that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, that you want to go to law school, that you want to do this. And this is just one hurdle or one step in that process. And that what will be, and that you will get accepted to the school of your choice, especially if you're prepared, you do your research, you stay organized, and you start early. So we're at the Q&A portion of the webinar. There's not too many questions.
Okay, since we don't have anybody actually live, I don't even think we need to do this part.
Okay.
But this has been really great, and I think this is going to turn into some really awesome social media content, because you did such a fantastic job, and I'm genuinely saying that. I think
Thank you.
you knocked it out of the park. This is some really awesome stuff, and the most that could happen, or sorry, the least that can happen is that they would get a recording later on, or that we put this on social media, because you did a fantastic job.
Awesome. Thank you. I said the Q&A part because I'm like, hopefully, I didn't want it to seem like nobody came. So I was like,
It's okay. It's this recording. We'll chop it up, so it's like,
okay,
yeah,
awesome.
we'll chop it up, and we'll use bits and pieces for whatever the case may be. So
Yeah,
thank you
great.
very much.
Yeah, of course. I don't know if I need to do anything more on my end for anything. No, we're good.
No, you're good to go. I'll give you your half an hour back.
Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon.
Bye.
Bye.